Hi everyone, and welcome to Celtic Griffon's How to Play Warhammer Fantasy Battle 4th Edition, Part 4, the Combat Phase. The combat phase is the heart of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. More games of Warhammer will be decided on the fickle fate of melee combat than not. Once all shooting has been resolved, we then move on to the hand-to-hand combat phase. All units in contact with the enemy will fight. This phase is an exception in that both sides get to participate. In this segment, we will not cover specific hand-to-hand items such as chariots, war machine crew, monster mounts, and other esoteric units. We also will not be touching on the psychological effects which can affect hand-to-hand combat. Instead, these items will be showcased in a future video. The player whose turn it starts, whoever's turn it is starts by nominating a single group of antagonists. All models which can strike blows will do so. Then you will determine which side won the combat. The losers may break away from combat, with the winners usually pursuing. Then the losing side may have to check for nearby troops with panic due to seeing their friends get cut down or run away. A hand-to-hand combat usually involves 2 units, 1 unit from each side. It is possible, however, that many units can be involved in a single combat. Each group of models where units touch entails a single group. So who strikes first? Usually any models which charge this round fight first. After those attacks are resolved, then the fastest troops go next. This is determined by initiative. If there's a tie in initiative between models on opposing sides, the sides which won the combat in the previous turn gets the edge. If this doesn't apply, you drill a d6. So in this example here, we have an army of Empire units facing off some orcs and goblins. If, for example, we'll use this example here. Let's say that these troops here, have entered into combat. So we have some orc archers with melee weapons, and we also have some Empire troops with shield and hand weapon here. So whoever charged in this scenario would go first. Okay, so who strikes first? Again, the charging unit would strike first. Let's say that the orc archers charge it into the Empire swordsman. All right, so determining who goes first, we now choose who fights. In this case, we'll just assume that there's no heroes in either unit. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 orc archers, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Empire troops. A model can fight if its base is touching the base of an enemy model. This happens even if there's models that are in the attack in the rear. So let's say this black orc unit decides to come into the side or the flank of the unit. These 5 models here would also be able to fight. And the same thing would happen if you charged in the rear of the unit. Now, if you are facing off versus a hero character, the models can choose to determine whether they're going to fight against regular troopers or the hero. Okay, and in this case, also a standard bearer or a musician is also considered as a regular hero, as a regular trooper, not a hero. Now, cavalry often have 2 attacks, and as you can see over here, there's some cavalry models. There's some wolf riders with spears. These models will have, each goblin will get 1 attack, and also each wolf will get an attack as well. Now the initiative will dictate which models strike in which order. So you can use either the highest of the initiative for the, you use it for the goblins have their own initiative and the wolves have their own initiative, and that may determine who strikes. But if these Wolf Rider units manage to charge into combat, they would go first. So the Rider uses its own weapon skill and the Mount uses its own weapon skill. So once we've decided who can fight, we now are going to roll to hit. So we're going to again start with the unit, in this case that charged, and we'll just back these models off here. All right. In this case, we have 4 orc archers. They have a base weapon skill, I believe, we're just going to say that they have a weapon skill of 3. That may be incorrect. Just one second. I just wanted to check some stats there. So yes, the orcs have a weapon skill of 3. So also the Empire troops have a weapon skill of 3. So in this case, we compare the 2 hit chart, and a weapon skill 3 for the attacker versus the defender weapon skill 3 means they need a 4, 5, or 6. So in this case, we're going to roll 4 dice because there's 4 models, and all the models have one single attack, and we're going to see if we get a 4, 5, or 6. Okay, in this case, I rolled a 6, 6, and a 5, and a 1. So 3 of the Empire models have been hit. The next step of the combat phase is we go any models that hit. Now we're going to see if we've wounded them. Okay, and just notice on the hit chart, it's really important that the highest number to hit is always a 5. So even the most lowliest goblin has a chance against a dragon in Warhammer. They'll be able to hit it, but they may not be able to wounding the opponent. So once we determine how many hits were successful, in this case 3, so we're going to remove one of the dice that didn't hit, and we're going to check to see if we're going to wound. Now, when you check to see if you wound, you always check the strength of the attacking model versus the toughness of the defending model. In this case, the strength of an orc is 3. And the toughness of the Empire human troops is also a 3. So if we look at the wound chart here, we'll see that a 3 versus a 3, we're going to need a 4 to wound. So we're next going to roll our dice to see if we wound. And in this case, we've wounded twice, and one of them didn't manage to get through armor or didn't do anything serious to the model. So we've now wounded twice. Now, if their model has multiple wounds, there's a special case scenario, and we'll get into that in a bit. Okay, so after we've determined how many wounds have happened, we now are going to see if there's any, if the models get they usually get a saving throw. Now these models are Empire troops, and let's say that they're wearing light armor. Okay, so the base save for a model is 0. There's no value. But if you're wearing light armor, you now get a special save of 6, and if you have a shield, it goes down by 1 more, and you can see that on this chart here. So in this case, the models have a save of 5 up. So these 2 wounded Empire humans will now roll these 2 dice, the wound dice, and they'll check to see if they get a 5 or a 6. Now, if the strength of the model is higher than 3, if it's 4 or greater, there may be a reduction in the armor because of the high strength of the wounding blow. So in this case, we're going to roll, and if we get a 5 or a 6, we're actually going to save. All right, so there's a 5 and a 4. So in this case, one model is going to get removed. One model has been killed or taken out of action by the Empire, by the orc archers. So generally we'd consider that, as the armies clash together, that the models would be removed from the front rank. But to keep things tidy and prevent from moving bases around, we're going to actually remove the model from the back of the base instead. Okay, so that model's gone. Once the attacking unit has finished checking to see if any casualties have occurred, the other units get to strike back. So in this case, even though there's 5 models, and we're not going to say that this guy's a champion, we're just going to say he's a regular trooper. So in this case, we have 5 models. 1 has died, though. Any models that have died reduce the number of attacks in return. So in this case, there's going to be 4 models that get to retaliate. So we're going to roll 4 dice, and we're going to see if we can hit. And again, we're going to, the orc archers don't have any champions as well. So 4 dice, we know that both weapon skills are 3, so we need 4, 5, or 6 to wound. Okay, in this case, they've done 2 hits. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to check if we can wound the models. Now again, the Empire humans with the sword have a strength of 3, but in this case it's a little bit different because the orcs actually have a toughness of 4. So if we check the chart, 3 versus 4, we're going to need a 5 or a 6 to wound. And we got a 4 and a 1 here, so they didn't do any wounds in return. So no models have to make a saving throw from the orc archers. All right. So at this point, now we've kind of, both sides have struck their blows, so now we get to determine whether or not who won the combat. So the thing to do here is, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to compare wounds, and this is the base level of the combat. So we know the orc archers have done 1 wound, so we're just going to give them usually you can just use some dice to determine what your results are. Okay, so the orcs have inflicted 1 wound. The next thing that we check is a chart that has a bunch of modifiers for the battle. Okay, so the first thing that you can check for is ranks, and you take a look, and as long as the unit was 4 models wide, we check to see are there any ranks beyond the first one. In this case, there still is 1 full rank, so that's another a bonus, I guess, for that side. Okay. All right. The next thing we're going to check is, do they have a standard? No, they don't. Is there an army battle standard? An army battle standard is usually a single model in your army, and he carries the huge banner for your entire army. In this case, we don't have one. We next check to see, are either of these troops on high ground? The answer is no. They're both on flat ground. We check to see if there's any flank bonus. So are there any other units that came in from, that are charging from the flank or from the rear? And in this case, there's not. So our total modifiers for the combat is 2. Now we go to the Empire troops. Now you may think, 1 model died, so the Empire might run away. But they actually have better bonuses because they're a bigger unit, and they have a standard as well. So we're going to go through now. So first of all, did the Empire wound cause any casualties towards the orcs? No. So the next thing we're going to check, do they have a standard? Yes, they do. So that's a 1. Next, we're going to see, do they have an army battle standard? Nope. Are they on high ground? Nope. Is there any flank bonus for the flank or rear? Nope. But we've got, at the beginning, we have to also check to see if there's ranks. And there is. There's 1, 2, 3. There's actually 4 models here still. So there's actually four ranks beyond the first. However, you never count for rank bonus. You never count more than 3. So in this case, we would go like this. Okay, and that's all the bonuses that we've checked now. So now we compare the scores of the two antagonists. The orc archers have a score of 2, and the Empire has a score of 4. So in essence, the Empire actually have won this battle by a difference of 2. The next thing that happens is the losers are now going to have to make a break check. They have to see if they hold their ground or if they are going to run away from the combat because of the overwhelming numbers, in this case, of the Empire. So we're going to check the leadership value of an orc, and a leadership value of a standard orc is 7. Okay. Now we can also check to see if there is a army general or a army standard bearer that's within 12 inches. In this case, we'll say this is the general, the shaman. I don't know if you can see it here, but it's out of range. It's not within 12 inches of the model. And let's say back here, this orc on a war boar, let's say he's the battle standard bearer. He's also not within 12 inches, so we can't use their supporting benefits. The benefit for being within 12 inches of the general is that you get to use the base leadership of the general instead. The benefit of an army battle standard bearer is when you check to break, you can re-roll if you fail the first roll. All right. A leadership test is always done on 2 dice. And what we're going to do is we're going to roll 2 dice and we're going to compare the dice, and we're also going to add the difference in the modifier. So in this case, we've got a 7, But that now we're going to add the 2 because the difference of the combat modifiers, and that becomes a 9. So in this case, this unit of orc archers have broken from the combat. Once you've determined that that the unit has broken, you're now going to check to see if there are any other units that may be panicking because of these units going to break. So any units within 12 inches, in this case these goblins, wolf riders would have to check. And in this case here, these black orcs would have to check. Now, black orcs have a special rule where they do not break away from combat when it's goblins or orcs. Orcs also have a special rule that they don't break away from goblins. So if goblins flee, it doesn't matter. The orcs don't care. But in this case, goblins see their bigger, tougher cousins, the orcs, flee. They're going to have to make a check. So the black orcs wouldn't have to. If these were regular orcs back here, they would have to make a standard check. So these guys are going to make a panic test. And we're going to do that before moving anything here. So we're going to see if this unit breaks. Now, if there were multiple combats going on at the same time, we wouldn't have, and this unit broke, and let's say a unit over here broke for the orcs, they only have to test once for panic in the whole turn. They don't have to check for panic and multiple times. Okay, so let's start here with this unit here, this goblin unit. I believe goblins have a leadership of 5, but they're let's say in the general's view here. So let's say the general's got a 9. So we're going to check on a 9 here. And they did get a 5 actually, so they're going to hold their ground. This unit here is going to check to see if they've already checked to see if they've broken from combat, and they have. So next, this unit has to determine whether or not they want to pursue the combat. Generally, troops will pursue, and by pursuing, you will automatically capture a standard if it was in that unit, and the army battle standard bearer if it's in the unit. In this case, it's not. They may also decide not to pursue because maybe they want to instead brace for another attack that may be coming on the next turn, or maybe by pursuing we'll take that unit well out of position for the rest of the battle, and that's sometimes not a good thing as well. So in this case here, these guys are going to decide to pursue. So because they're foot units and they don't have they only have a movement value of 4. They're going to flee 2d6. So we're going to roll for the unit of orcs. They're going to flee 6. And now we're going to roll for the pursuit of the empire. They also have a movement of 4, so they're going to roll 2d6 as their pursuit roll. In this case, it's a 7. So what's going to happen is this unit here is going to turn around. And they're going to flee directly away from their enemy 6 inches. So in this case, it goes 6 inches to there. Now we know that this unit had more value, so it had 7 inches. So they managed to catch the unit of orcs. So in this case, we're going to remove the unit of orcs entirely off the table. They have to move their full distance, the full 7 inches. And these guys are now eliminated from the battle. Okay, and again, these guys managed to hold. Now, if the orcs had the next turn for movement, they may be in big trouble here because now these wolf riders might be able to come in and charge their flank. Okay, at this point now we can remove any casualties as well from the board. Okay, so that's how we conduct a standard one-on-one battle. Now, if there's multiple units in the battle, so again, we're going to say that these black orcs have come in here, and let's say that these units here have come in here, and heck, let's say that we have these ogres here that are on the human side, and let's say they came in and attacked from this flank here. So we have a little bit of a different scenario here, and I'll just go through how this would work. So first of all, in this case, we may have let's say that the orcs have again had the initiative, and they're going to they're the people that started the charge in. That wouldn't really make sense. So let's say that this was let's say that the humans instead were it's their turn. Okay, and they've somehow miraculously managed to hold off these two units of the black orcs and the regular orcs. So let's say on the humans' turn, these ogres decided to come in and fight. Okay, so if this happens, this is called a multi-unit combat, and it's handled in much the same way. So first of all, any charging units are going to fight first. So in this case, the ogres would make their blows against these archers. Now, even though they're facing the wrong way, if any of these two archers survive, they'll still be able to get an attack back. So let's say they don't. Let's say the ogres inflict three casualties here. Okay. All right, so that's the first unit that happens. Now, the next thing that happens is we're determined who goes next, because that was the only charge this round. So one of these sides had to win the combat last turn. Let's say that the orcs won the combat. So if there's an equal initiative, then the orcs would get to go next. But otherwise, we're going to compare initiative values. And I believe that humans have a better initiative than orcs. So in this case, these 5 models would get to attack. Now, this model here, actually more than 5 can attack. These 5 can attack these four models in the front here, these orc archers. These 2 guys, however, could attack an ogre. It's very unlikely that they're going to hurt the ogre. And remember, in the combat resolution phase, you want to try to get as many bonuses as possible. So they probably have a better odds of hitting these 4 orc archers, so that they probably should go against them. Okay. Also on this side, these 4 here models are in contact with the black orcs, so they could also strike their blows. So let's say, for example, that one black orc dies, and that here none of them died because of their better toughness. Okay, so they've both done that. So next we're going to take a look at who's got the better initiative here. I don't know if they both have the same. If it's the same, it's up to the owner of the models. So let's say these black orcs fight. They have an extra hand weapon. So let's say they take out 2 of those models. And let's say these 4 fight back because none were defeated. Oh, sorry. In this case, 1 died. So only 3 would get to attack back. But they have all 1 attack, but they have an extra hand weapon, so they actually have 2 attacks each. So there'd be 6 dice rolled. So let's say they wounded 2, and let's say this orc took out 1 more. Okay. So when it comes to once every troop has finished fighting in initiative order or charge order, we're now going to again figure out the total results for the battle. So in this case, we'll start with the orcs here. The orcs have, first of all, they've inflicted 3 casualties. So we'll start off with a 3. If I can find it. Here's a 3. And they also have 1-2 ranks. Now, because this is 4 wide and they have 1 model back here that's died, it's not a full rank. So it's only after the first rank. So we have 1-2 ranks only. Now, even though you've got multiple units, you check whichever unit actually on your side has the biggest rank bonus. That's the one you use. You don't add this one and this one and this one. You just take the bonus for the largest unit, the best rank bonus possible for one unit. Okay. So next thing, so we've got that. We don't have any standard bearers, and we're not on higher ground. But we now have a flank. As long as the flanking unit has at least 5 models, they'll get a bonus. And if you're flanking to the side, that's a 1. So our total combat score here is 6. So next we're going to go into the Empire, which are the ogres here and the Empire units. So the casualties is 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to start with 4 here. Next, we're going to check the biggest rank bonus, which is, again, 1, 2, 3. We're going to check to see if they've got a standard. Now, if there's multiple standards, let's say there was let's say this group here was facing like this. There's 2 standards for the Empire troops, but you only get a +1 bonus, no matter how many standards you have. If there's an army battle standard that was part of it, though, then you would get an additional +1. Okay, but in this case, they're not fighting. All right. So that's the standard. So and that's all the combat results. So again, we have 6, to 8. So in this case, the Empire troops, which means the Ogres and the Empire, have won the combat. And all of these other troops have to take the test at -2, or with a 2 differential. All right, so the Black Orcs may have a 8 leadership, and let's say that they're in range of their leader, so it might be a 9. So we're going to roll 2 dice for their test, for their break test. It's a 4. We add 2. It becomes a 6. Is 6 higher than 9? No, they're going to hold their ground. Next, we're going to roll for these guys. Now, let's say they're not in range of the Army Battle Standard Bearer or the other thing. We're going to check. This time a 10, we're going to add 2. That's 12. That's higher than the 7 leadership here. So again, these troops are going to break. And because they broke, we have to check, are there any other units on the board within 12 inches of the broken unit? Because those will panic. And in this case, again, we've got our Goblin Wolf Riders, and they're going to potentially panic. So we know these guys are going to flee, but we have to now check for these guys. Now, when you roll for your panic, you cannot use the benefit of the Army Battle Standard Bearer. The Army Battle Standard Bearer only gives you a reroll on a break test. It does not give you a reroll on a psychology test, and that's what panic is. But you can, however, use the better leadership of your army general at all times as long as you're within 12 inches. So in this case, instead of using a 5 leadership, they see their general there, and they can decide to hold their ground hopefully a little bit better. We'll roll for them. In this case, it's 11. Doesn't matter. They're going to flee as well. So the Wolf Riders would run away 3d6 because they're a fast troop. When they run, they're running away from these 2 groups. So if you kind of project a line that goes like this, they're going to kind of go straight back. Okay, in this case, they'd go 6. So we probably would turn them so that they face away from the combat in general. And then they'd go 6 inches, which takes them right up the hill toward the archers on the hill there. Okay? And these guys, again, are going to roll 2d6, and they're going to flee 6. Now, these guys can choose to pursue, and so can these. If they want to hold off, let's say the Ogres don't want to pursue, they can make a leadership test. I don't know what their leadership is. I'll just assume it's a 7. They failed, so they have to follow, and then we'll try to hold off on these guys. Well, these guys are not going to pursue at all. They cannot pursue because they're still locked into combat. Okay, but these guys could have. They wanted to hold off on the pursuit. They failed the charge, so they have to pursue. So now we're going to roll to see how far the Orc archers move. They go 4, and these guys have probably a better. They may have 3d6. I'm not sure what their movement is offhand. If it's higher than 6. Then they'll roll 3d6, but let's just say it's a 5. And in this case, they go 10. So they would go 10 inches. So these models are going to have to flee kind of like opposite. You kind of figure out which way they go because they're being forced this way and this way. So it's kind of going to be the median value here. So they're going to flee 4 inches. These guys are going to go 10. In this case, they would probably go something like this and go like that. Now again, this in Warhammer, when you're doing this kind of thing, when you're checking the direction of fleeing, the rules in 4th edition absolutely do not clarify this very well. So you kind of make your best guess here. And again, this unit would be eliminated from the battle because they were caught. Now, if, however, let's say these Wolf Riders had only fled to here. Let's say they didn't flee, they rolled triple 1s, for example. If that's the case, because this unit here was going to end up coming into contact with them, they would actually get another immediate flee. So they would get to run again, and if they're caught by this still caught, if they haven't run away from however far the Ogres went, they would also be eliminated. But they get a bonus flee movement because they were being chased, I guess. Now, another scenario, let's say the Wolf Riders did not flee, that they were here. In this case, this movement of 10 to pursue the fleeing archers would bring them into contact with these guys. In this case, they would have to just hold their ground. There may be a fear check or a terror check as well involved, but we'll get into that more in the psychology section. So there are some more nuances when it's a multi-user combat. All right, so what happens if you're in a combat and you do not flee? So let's say that the combat just involved these troops here. So we've got the Black Orcs and we've got the regular Empire troops here. So if the combat result is a tie, then neither troop is going to break. Okay, and if you pass your test, the losers are not going to break either. Okay, so you wouldn't do anything with the standards at all at this point. Okay. Now again, if a unit breaks and they have a standard, the pursuers automatically capture the standard. And generally what you would do is you would put the standard behind the unit. It's kind of like a trophy. Okay. Now, if a unit has won the combat, they can do something called lapping around. Lapping around, so let's say in this case the combat has completed, and we found out that the Black Orcs won the combat, but the Empire models did not break away from combat. So in this case, the Black Orcs can do something called lapping around. And what lapping around does is it lets up to 4 models from the rear ranks enter each different flank. So you could go like this now. And this lets you get your more models into combat for next turn. Now, there's advantages to lapping around and there's disadvantages to lapping around. So one of the advantages is, in this case, the Black Orcs are tougher and they have an extra attack, so it may be beneficial for them to do this. They get 4 extra attacks. The Empire models, however, are going to strike first, so that may be a disadvantage. The other disadvantage of lapping around is that it does affect your rank bonus. So in this case, if we move 4 models to the flank here, instead of getting a +2, assuming no casualties next turn in combat, they may only get a +1 for rank, and you may not want that. Now, if you've managed to wrap around and there's at least 5 models wrapping around to the flanks, you would get the +1 bonus for the flank bonus. And if you kept lapping around and you had at least 5 models in the rear flank, in the rear as well, you would also get the +2 there. Now they do, the rear and the side flanks do also stack. So if you have enemy in the flank and enemy in the rear, that could be a +3 bonus. Now, if there's multiple flank bonuses, it's actually there's a clarification there. Just one sec here. If both sides have multiple flanking units, the side with the most flanking units gets the bonus. Okay, otherwise not. All right, so we've done restraining pursuit. Kind of discussed some of these other things. So if any part of the unit runs off the table, they're destroyed. Now, as long as one unit pursued, they've gained the standard. Now, if the pursuers also run off the battlefield, on the next turn where they could move, they actually just form back up on the table edge where they ran off. And they do not make any other movements that turn. So leaving the battlefield can often put you out of the game if you're doing a fixed turn limit on the game. So for example, you know, if these models were pursuing flat off the table, on the next turn, all they do is they come back on the table like so. Just down here. They come off, if they fled, they'll move off the table like so. And so they can really be out of the combat out of the battle for a little while. And on fixed turns, if there's only 4 turns in the game, that could be a disadvantage. Now, another thing is defended obstacles. So let's say that these Black Orcs were facing off against these Ogres. the ogres came charging in, but they're already behind this barrier, this here. So I don't know if you can see here. So these ogres decide to charge into the black orcs, but they're already behind this rock barrier here. When that happens, when you attack with the chargers, so let's say the ogres all have 2 attacks, so there's 3 of them, so that would be 6 dice that we would roll. They need 6s when they hit, because that's the benefit of being behind a defended barrier, such as a wall, if you're behind a fortress, battlement, for example, or a hedge. So in this case, that was pretty good. That would be 2 successful hits, and now you'd roll to wound as normal. Okay, so that's how defended obstacles work. Now there's also a bit that we want to discuss about different weapon types. So the first type of weapon that we want to discuss is a two-handed axe. I don't know if I have a model on the battlefield here that has a heavy two-handed axe. I don't think I do. But if you have a big axe, a big hammer, a big club, a big sword, a double-handed sword or a bastard sword, then they can carry these things, and usually you have to pay extra points for them. And a double-handed weapon gives you these restrictions and benefits. The first thing that it does is that you will always strike last. So even if you charged, you have to let your enemy strike all their blows before you can return the blows. And if both sides have double-handed weapons, then you look at initiative instead of that. And if they both have the same initiative, you would roll a d6. Now these models cannot use shields in hand-to-hand combat, and any models using a double-handed weapon have +2 strength. Now flails, I'm trying to see if I have a flail here. I may. A flail is basically a chain with a big ball on the end of it. So it's a heavy weight, usually on a pole or a chain or a handle. Now if you're using a flail in combat, then in the first turn you add +2 strength. But any further turns of combat, you don't get that bonus. And again, models with flails may not use a shield. A halberd is usually a heavy pole with a heavy axe head or something on the end of it, or some kind of piercing weapon. So halberds are again, you cannot use shields if you have them in hand-to-hand combat, and they always give you a +1 strength. Now spears have a special unit, so have a special benefit here. So in this case here, these models here have spears. When they attack, or if a unit does not charge, if it does not move during combat. So in this case, let's say they didn't move here. Let's say these black orcs came in and attacked, or we'll make this a bit simpler here. These black orcs are in combat. Yeah, these black orcs are in combat with this unit of spearmen. So the spears, because they didn't move, if the black orcs charged, they actually get an extra rank. So normally they only get to fight. So let's the black orcs charged. So let's say they did, I don't know, three casualties. Let's say there's no heroes in here. So they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They actually had 10 models to start with. They've lost 3, so they have 7. They'll actually get the second rank and fight back, just like they were in the first rank. So in this case, they get 7 retaliatory attacks. Okay, so that's the benefit of spears if you're cavalry. If you stay still, you get an extra rank. If you're spears and you are a sorry, that was an infantry. If you're spears and you're a cavalry unit, such as these wolf riders here, those wolf riders, if they charge, they get a +1 to their strength. And that's how cavalry work for spears. So that's their only benefit. Now lances, this model here has a lance. When a model with a lance charges, they work like spears. So, and remember, infantry can't use lances. So a cavalry model which charges with a lance gets a +2 strength bonus on the turn that they charge. So if they charge, break a unit, charge next turn, they again get the +2 for the first round. All right. Now, finally, we have I want to make a note about these special troop types, which cost double usually, which are the standard bearers of a unit and musicians of a unit. Now, let's say the Black Orcs charged in here, and let's say they decimated the first rank. Okay, let's not use the cavalry. We'll just use these guys here. Sorry, they weren't cavalry. Let's say that this charge here happens. The Black Orcs come charging into the Empire unit. Now, if they manage to take out 4 models, this unit has both a musician, a drummer, and it has a standard bearer. In this case here, the 4 models, and let's say there's no hero, you'd have to choose, according to the standard rules, you'd have to choose one of these special models, the drummer or the musician or the standard bearer, to be taken out. Because anything in the fighting rank has to die in general, even though we remove them from the back. So in this case, you would probably remove your musician. Now, a house rule that we usually use when we play 4th edition is that we usually let these models stay until the very end. Now, it does make those models quite a bit better than the rules were intended, but I like using that rule. You don't have to. The standard rules do state that you'd have to remove. So in this case here, if you manage to take out 5 casualties, both the standard bearer and the drummer would be dead, and they would have to be removed, and you'd replace them with regular models. Now, if this was not a unit champion, then it's fine. Now, if this is a unit champion or a hero of some sort, generally, when you attack, you have to choose whether you're attacking a standard model or the unit champion hero. If you do standard models, then even though you did 5 casualties here, that hero wouldn't have had any wounds against him. So hopefully that makes sense there. With my special house rule, where you don't remove standards and musicians, it kind of is assumed that another trooper picks up the standard and keeps it flying for morale, and I guess it's also kind of assumed that all of the regular troopers or warriors know how to use the musical instrument, which is kind of not realistic perhaps, but it's how it is. So I hope this helps you understand how combat works. A note, however, is when if this unit was fleeing, next turn during its movement phase, it can test again to see if it continues to flee, or if it can reform and turn around and again face enemy. Something I didn't mention here is with these models such as ogres. So ogres may have, I believe they have 3 wounds. So let's say that these Black Orcs are fighting these ogres. Okay, I don't have them ranked up very well here, but that's okay. Let's say that the ogres, they have 3 wounds, but let's say the Black Orcs actually managed to do 2 wounds. When we look at our combat results, we do we still use those 2 wounds, so that instead of counting models, we would use 2, so they would have a +2, plus they'd have 2 ranks here, so 4. Okay, now if let's say the Black Orcs actually did 4 wounds, we would actually, for every 3 wounds that they do, 1 model is removed, and there'd be 1 left over here. So we just put another die. Maybe you'll use it like a smaller die to represent that they have an additional wound. And in this case, they would start with a combat resolution of 4, because they've done 4 wounds here. So you always remove full models where you can, if possible. And it gets a little trickier if there's a character model in there. If there was an ogre champion or hero, for example. So the next stage of the rules that we're doing will encompass the magic phase. And the magic phase for Warhammer 4th edition used a supplement called Warhammer Magic, or was it called Battle Magic, I think. So, and it's a card-based system with 4th edition. And again, in this segment, I'm not going through how combat works with chariots and war machines and maybe steam tanks and such things. So we can do that on a future episode. So thank you very much for watching the Celtic Griffon's Guide to 4th edition. And of course, if you have any comments or confusion based on what I've shown you here, you feel free to reach out in the comments, and I'll try to respond in a timely fashion. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day.